licenses. So, fitness for purpose. Open source geospatial software sometimes can be thought of as just for geeks, or sometimes people will tell you it's a bit rough around the edges, which occasionally it is. But there are big companies using the components that we all recommend. PostgreSQL is now being used basically for the French Caisse Nationale d'Allocation de Famille. So one of the big French social services databases is being moved over to PostgreSQL. And this was not a cost decision. Basically they said it does the job better, it fulfills what we need better. It has levels of performance and reliability that meets our production goals. So, you know, that's a big database. That's, you know, responsible for 69 billion euros, 11 million claimants. You know, that's a big old database. The United States Department of Defense said back in October last year that in almost all cases, open source software meets the definition of commercial computer software. So again, you know, they've got some fairly critical things going on, the Department of Defense, you know. I don't think they'd be going for stuff that was, you know, not reliable or slightly geeky in some way. So again, fitness for purpose. Choose projects that are feature-rich and well-established. They're more likely to have the features that you need, and they're more likely to actually work. You know, read case studies, find out what other people in your sector are using in open source. Try and find out, you know, is there a package out there that does what we want? Look at your workflow. Are you being sold, is somebody trying to sell you a package that does everything you want and a million other things? Or actually do you just need a smaller package that does exactly what you want? Ask the community, get professional advice. So again, OSGeo, the Open Source Geospatial Foundation, is a really good place to go for all of this advice. And in particular, the local chapter, which again I'll go into in a little bit more detail in a second. So, some of the advantages of open source, we talked about this earlier really. But I'd say, particularly for open source geospatial software, interoperability is a really big deal. You know, I like not having to be forced to change file formats with every release. I kind of like the fact that a shapefile that I create in QGIS, or that I created in QGIS 1.5 will work in 1.7. This is in direct comparison to, say, CAD, you know, where a DXF, a DWG that you create in one version may well not work in a later version. I was told an interesting anecdote the other day, which is that Boeing have planes in the sky for which the engineering information is in a format that they cannot read anymore. Now I find that quite worrying, and I don't know if it's got anything to do with the latest problems around engines and things like that, but you know, I like to have control over my file formats personally. Again, we're not talking about proprietary file formats that only work with one package. In open source, what we want is to get people to use our software, so we want everybody to be able to use it. We want to be flexible. We want you to use, you know, whatever file format that you like. So, you know, to be honest, it can make your life an awful lot easier. Quantum GIS is a great example of this, in that it's a lot happier reading, say, Esri shape files and MapInfo tab files than, you know, than any of the commercial counterparts. So the point, again, this is a point that was made earlier, it will coexist quite happily with your proprietary GIS package. It doesn't have to be, it's not an all or nothing thing. You can slot in various aspects of the open source stack into your existing system with no problem whatsoever. Modularity, this is a great law, Zaminsky's law. Every program expands until it can read email. Well, I don't know, I just need my GIS package to work as a GIS package. I don't actually need it to have all of these bells and whistles. So, yeah, we've already talked about OSGIS is not one monolithic package. It doesn't try and do everything. The benefit for that is that you can find the component that works best for you. And if the component doesn't work, you can slot in a different one without having a major impact on the rest of your software. And you know, IT people might tell you that, yes, that's true, but we've actually got 7 packages to support rather than 1. But I don't know, with my IT hat on, since I do an awful lot of IT support, personally I'd rather that just one element stopped working and I had to fix one element rather than suddenly find that the entire system stops. So it's a question of personal choice, I guess. But, so you've already seen an example of this, but this is basically the geospatial stack. And for all elements of this, there are a number of open source packages that are available, all of which, as I say, are perfectly interoperable, all will work quite happily together. So, control. For me, this is the absolute killer of open source. I like to be in control of my data. I like to be in control of my software too. So, with open source, I think you're in charge. Once you have the software, it's legally yours. You haven't got to run the risk of people changing the terms of the license. You haven't got to worry about how many computers you install the software on. You haven't got to worry about, are you legally allowed to put a copy on your home computer as well? It's fine, you know, and that I think is a very useful and important thing. So, if I've convinced anybody, if we've convinced anybody of the use of open source, where can you go for help and further information about geospatial software? So, the Open Source Geospatial Foundation. Now, I'm the representative of the UK local chapter of OSGeo. It's run almost entirely by volunteers. There is one paid-for employee in the whole of the international organisation. The rest of us do this in our spare time, basically. And what do local chapters do? Well, they provide focused support, maybe in a given country or possibly in a given language. So, for instance, there's a big Spanish language chapter, but we've got a chapter in the UK. We have a mailing list where you can go to for support. We help organise, well, we help collect together information about training. We help organise conferences. We talk about the improved software packages that I've talked about, the ones that are incubated. We help organise big conferences. We have conferences entirely based around open source GIS in the UK. And also there is the big Phosphor-G conference, which is run every year internationally by OSGeo. So what OSGeo wants to be is the place where you go for information about OSGIS. Not trying to kind of force you down any particular line, giving you a choice of software packages, giving you the support, giving you the advice, and basically helping you out. So, as I say, we've got the address of the main OSGeo link there, and also our local chapter page, where if you're interested you can sign up for our quite low traffic and definitely no spam mailing list. So, very quick summary. Open source software in general is mature enough to consider in commercial procurement. You can mitigate against any perceived risk by choosing good, sustainable, active products. You can get commercial support for all of these products and proper training. Obviously, Newcastle run training. Amongst the various speakers that are here today, several of us also run training courses, so you've got a number of different choices. Several of us also offer support for these kind of packages, so you're not going to ever be locked into one particular vendor, training provider, whatever. You've got a number of different choices available to you.